Hello. Today's topic is going to be on data. And this idea of data is quite topical at the moment, big data and all that you might hear about in the news. But really, why do we collect any data at all? It's to gather information. Okay, we collect data so that we can make educated decisions. And governments, businesses, even people collect data so they can make intelligent decisions about what needs to be done in the future. Okay, if I know how many people drive down a road, then I know how strong I need to build that road. But there's good data, or there's data that's done well, and there's data that's done poorly. And I don't think there has ever been a time in history where we need to know how data is actually collected, considering how much information and misinformation is actually out there. And so what we look at is the 6 stages of an investigation. And before we begin a statistical investigation, we need to look at or decide, what are we actually looking at? Are we just gathering random bits of data and then trying to make an idea of it later? Or do we actually have a pointed question that we're trying to answer? The first one is posing a question. So we need to actually pose a question and clearly define that question. If you ever just sit or do a PhD or anything like that, a lot of time is actually spent on organising the question. The second thing we need to do is actually collect that data, and that's the methodology of any PhD. You need to collect that, and stage 3, organise that data so that it's meaningful. But when we get to stage 4 or 5 and 6, this is when we start getting to the meaty parts. We summarise and display that data, usually using line graphs, or should I say graphs and graphics. And then we take statistical measures of that data, mean, median and mode and so forth. Then we analyse what all of that means, and we draw conclusions about that data, and finally we write a report. Now, if I could give a really, a glib, a silly example. If I wanted to do a statistical investigation, does Year 11 smell? Now, we all know the answer to that is absolutely yes, but if I was going to do a proper investigation, I've got my clearly stated question, and then collecting data, I'd have to do a tally of, which Year 11s or how many Year 11s out of the total are a bit whiffy. And then organising data, I'd put them in a spreadsheet or into tallies or categories. And then I'd be summarising and displaying the data, whether that be in tables or graphs. And then the analysis and the conclusion that I come to is, yes, they do smell. And then hopefully in my data, there might be a bit of a why, or there might be something observable that we might be able to find. And usually that's what happens in these investigations, is other information comes to light. And finally, we write the report presenting the information that Year 11s do smell. Now, I don't know conclusively that they do. I just, genuinely suspect that they do. Finally, especially in the current climate, so much energy is spent in maintaining our privacy, whether it be online or just generally, but particularly online with Facebook. Anytime that data is collected, there's real issues over privacy. And if the government, for example, collects data, there's very, very stringent rules about how they can actually use that data, store that data, and whether individuals can access their own data. There was a big hoo-ha this year about the census, because they were going to keep the data for a little bit longer than they would have otherwise, and people were getting quite fired up about that.